In 2020, an unknown young Republican, George DeVolder Santos, ran against incumbent Democrat Tom Suozzi for a seat in the House of Representatives in New York's 3rd Congressional District. The district, known for leaning left, didn't appeal to other Republicans who believed Suozzi to be a shoo-in. As Election Day neared, Santos was barely registering in the polls. So when the Suozzi campaign discovered he was registered to vote outside the district, they didn't do much to bring awareness to the issue, figuring even bad publicity would only increase his recognition with voters. On Election Day, Santos was actually up over Suozzi, though this was during the height of the pandemic and absentee ballots had not yet been counted. No one thought Santos would actually be declared the winner. Despite votes still needing to be counted, Santos made his way to Washington, D.C. to attend new congressional member orientation. When the final votes were tallied, though, Suozzi was the clear winner.
2 weeks after Election Day, Democrat Tom Suozzi has won re-election representing New York's 3rd Congressional District. Suozzi had 53%, Republican challenger George Santos 47%, Libertarian candidate Howard
Santos could have accepted defeat, changed career paths, and became a distant memory. But that's not quite who George Santos is. Instead, he doubled down, traveling to Washington, D.C. to speak at Donald Trump's now infamous January 6th rally.
Hey, Washington. My name's George Santos. I'm from New York City. Who here's from New York? There's a lot of you. If you're from New York, you know what they did to me. They did to me what they did to Donald J. Trump. They stole my election. I came down to new higher orientation, to new...
Santos's first congressional run would mark the beginning of his short but now infamous political career, one that would end with an 87-month federal prison sentence. So how was Santos able to work his way up the GOP ladder, rubbing elbows with notable Republicans and securing their endorsements? Following Santos's convoluted web of lies is not an easy task, so let's start from the beginning. Born George Anthony DeVolder Santos to immigrant parents in 1988, Santos was raised in a reportedly rat-infested apartment in Queens, New York. Known for stealing money from family members, those closest to Santos would warn others that it's always a pebble of truth and a mountain of lies with George. Santos would attend public school and eventually obtain his GED before moving to Brazil with his mother. In Brazil, he reportedly became involved in LGBT activism and started competing as a drag queen. Despite living openly gay during this time, Santos married a woman from Brazil. Some would speculate this was done to aid the woman in gaining U.S. citizenship. They remained married for 7 years. During this marriage, Santos would openly date men. Santos' first legal trouble would begin while living in Brazil, after he stole a checkbook from a disabled man and used it to purchase high-end clothes. Brazilian authorities began legal proceedings against Santos, but before they could arrest him, he fled back to the United States. With only a GED, Santos began working as a customer service rep for Dish Network, eventually moving on to do freelance work at Linkbridge Investors, reportedly selling corporate sponsorships. It was around this time that Santos started his more serious scams, forming a nonprofit called Friends of Pets United that he claimed rescued over 2,500 animals. But controversy surrounded the organization from its conception. In 2017, he was charged with theft for writing more than $15,000 in bad checks to Amish dog breeders, and then holding an adoption event at a Staten Island pet store shortly after. These charges were dismissed, though, after Santos claimed his checkbook had been stolen. Santos then organized a GoFundMe for a veteran whose dog needed life-saving surgery. They were able to raise over $3,000 for the surgery, but when the veteran went to collect the money, Santos refused to hand it over. To everyone that helped me and Sapphire raise the money for her surgery, I'm sorry to say that we were scammed by Anthony DeVolder. The dog died just 2 months later. Friends of Pets United was never registered as a nonprofit, and with little information about who Santos was, the fraud went unreported. But Friends of Pets United would be just the first of many scams Santos would concoct. Moving from pets to politics, the then 31-year-old would make his first appearance on the political circuit by joining United for Trump, a small group dedicated to raising money for Trump's re-election. His goal was to raise $20,000 for a pro-Trump rally, but requested over $3,000 from the group in order to do so. "Understand, I'm not here for personal gains," he told the group after many questioned the high price tag. Santos was never able to raise the money for his rally, but he quickly became more involved with politics, appearing at rallies in New York and starting more fundraisers on GoFundMe, though it's unclear where any of the proceeds from these fundraisers actually ended up. Santos methodically infiltrated more young Republican groups in the New York area, donating money and gaining valuable connections along the way. Not one to fly under the radar, though, he would raise eyebrows among his peers, as he would openly brag about his multi-million-dollar mansions, the hundreds of thousands of dollars he claimed he had raised for the GOP, his nice clothes, watches, cars. At the time, none of his peers knew that it was all fabricated. Santos was such a skillful liar that most just brushed him off as a rich trust fund kid, though this was far from the truth, as they would come to find out. So in 2020, when Santos decided to officially run for office, it should be no surprise his resume didn't quite match his reality. Reporting a bachelor's from Baruch and an MBA from New York University, despite having no higher education. A project manager at Goldman Sachs responsible for doubling their revenue, he said, though at the time he was still freelancing for Linkbridge. With no other Republican contenders, Santos gained the full backing of the Nassau Republicans, allowing him to run against Suozzi in the 2020 election, ultimately ending in Santos's defeat. Had the Republican committee dug into Santos's resume even a little bit, they would have realized it was full of lies. And with Suozzi certain that he would win the election, the Democrats also failed to vet the newcomer, not believing it was even worth their time.
He not only overlooked me, he looked down on me, he refused to debate me.
A decision both parties would live to regret. The loss to Suozzi in 2020 didn't deter Santos, though. He merely ramped up his efforts. But first, he was going to need more cash, and a lot of it. To line his pocketbooks further, Santos would file for unemployment during the height of the pandemic. Despite being gainfully employed, Santos received more than $24,000 in unemployment benefits. With the extra cash, he was able to found the DeVolder organization. As the company's sole owner and managing member, Santos would claim to be handling over $80 million in assets and earning a comfortable $800,000 a year salary, though in actuality, the company was in the red $13,000. The DeVolder organization appeared to be used solely as a way to funnel money from ill-gotten political contributions. Santos would solicit money from unsuspecting donors, claiming it would be used for his campaign. The money would then be laundered through the company and used for personal debt and the purchase of designer clothing. Bank records show Santos would make significant cash deposits followed by a series of prompt withdrawals of similar amounts. The company's mailing address was that of a former Harbor City employee, a company Santos had briefly worked for before being exposed as a Ponzi scheme, though Santos was never implicated in the crime. But this money alone wasn't enough to fully fund his campaign. Partnering with Nancy Marks as his campaign treasurer, they devised a plan to qualify Santos for the Republican Party's National Committee program. The program provided financial and logistical support to congressional campaigns that raised more than $250,000 from third-party contributors. Stealing the personal identity and financial information of legitimate campaign contributors, Santos would repeatedly charge their credit cards. They then reported these contributions to be made from relatives and other associates to circumvent campaign contribution limits. In addition, Santos would simply claim to donate hundreds of thousands of dollars of his own money to his campaign, despite only having around $3,000 in the bank. So, with an impressive resume and supposed out-of-this-world donations to support the campaign, it's no surprise when the 2022 congressional race began that Santos would have the unwavering support of the Republican Party. And this second run was when the stars would align for Santos. Well, briefly anyhow. Suozzi decided to leave his congressional seat and the district was redrawn to favor the Republicans, setting the stage for Santos to steal the traditionally Democrat-held seat. But it wouldn't be long until cracks began to appear in Santos's campaign. As part of standard campaign practice, Santos' team commissioned a vulnerability report, and what it revealed caused several of his aides to urge Santos to drop out. and when he refused, they quit. It showed, of course, that he never graduated from Baruch or New York University, that he made a career out of working for companies accused of fraud, worked on Wall Street for firms directly responsible for the 2008 economic collapse, had at least 3 housing eviction lawsuits filed against him, as well as multiple civil judgments for owing creditors thousands of dollars, a suspended license in Florida for unpaid traffic violations, that although Santos campaigned on the message that candidates who did not live in their districts do not share the same burdens or struggles as their constituents, Santos was not registered to vote in New York's 3rd Congressional District until after he was running for office. Santos blamed politicians for New York City becoming what he called a third world hellhole. However, he had taken thousands of dollars in campaign contributions from a man who was ranked as one of New York City's worst landlords. The report also revealed a tweet where George claimed to be the grandson of a Holocaust refugee, though a look at his ancestry would show no Jewish connections.
Proud of my grandparents' story. My grandfather fleeing Ukraine, fleeing Stalin's persecution, going to Belgium, finding refuge there, marrying my grandmother, then fleeing Hitler, going to Brazil.
Oh, good morning. Shabbat Shalom to everybody. And thank you for being here.
Do I wish you a happy Hanukkah or a Merry Christmas?
I'm Catholic, but I'm also Jew-ish, as in ish.
Despite the report, which wasn't made public at the time, Santos would continue on in the race, going on to beat Democrat Robert Zimmerman by 8 points, becoming the first openly LGBTQ Republican ever elected to Congress.
George Santos will be one of the Republican newcomers to Congress this coming January, and this morning he is going on the record.
Unfortunately for Santos, his glory would be short-lived. Time magazine caught wind of the surprising upset. A typically blue county flipping red for an unknown gay Republican, they decided to run a story about this newcomer to Congress. Interested in his philanthropic efforts, they looked up his charity Friends of Pets United, but when their search turned up no records, they began to get suspicious. They decided to contact Goldman Sachs to talk to some of his former coworkers, but Goldman Sachs reported no record of Santos's employment. Of course, they discovered he never graduated from Baruch or New York University, but they also uncovered some of his more bizarre lies, like when Santos claimed 4 of his employees were killed in the Pulse nightclub shootings, but Times was unable to find record of anyone killed at Pulse that previously worked with Santos. Instead of owning multiple properties like Santos repeatedly claimed, they discovered he not only rented but was evicted numerous times. In Brazil, they discovered Santos was wanted for stealing that elderly man's checkbook. When the Times story broke, the public demanded answers. But Santos would hardly take accountability. My sins here are embellishing my resume.
And like I said to the New York Post, embellishing my resume was a mistake.
What does it mean, though? What does it mean? Because the meaning of the word actually matters in practice.
And I made a mistake. And I think humans are flawed, and we all make mistakes, Tulsi.
You've outright lied. A lie is not an embellishment on a resume. You said you worked at Goldman Sachs and Citigroup, but they've said, we've got no record of this guy working for us. You've said you've gone to and graduated from these universities, but they've said, well, we've got no record of that. These are blatant lies, and it calls into question how your constituents and the American people can believe anything that you may say when you are standing on the floor of the House of Representatives supposedly fighting for them. That's the real issue.
It's not false at all. It's debatable. I can sit down and explain to you what you can do in private equity, in capital intro, via servicing limited partners and general partners. And we can have this discussion that's going to go way above the American people's head. But that's not what I campaigned on. I campaigned on delivering. I embellished my resume. I did.
Congressman-elect Santos, we've given you a lot of time. I think the time that is owed is to the people of New York's 3rd. It's hard to imagine how they could possibly trust your explanations when you're not really even willing to admit the depth of your deception to them. Thank you so much for being here and joining us.
Thank you, Tulsi.
As much as Santos tried to downplay his lies, the public wouldn't let him off the hook that easy. After pictures of his drag queen days resurfaced, Santos simply denied the proof, writing on Twitter, The most recent obsession from the media claiming that I am a drag queen or performed as a drag queen is categorically false. The media continues to make outrageous claims about my life while I am working to deliver results. I will not be distracted nor fazed by this. As the public continued to dig deeper, trying to understand who Santos actually was, old tweets claiming his mother lost her life on 9/11 came under question, as immigration records had shown his mother wasn't even in the U.S. on 9/11. The lies were so egregious, it's hard to understand how he was able to get away with it for so long. A quick look at his financial reports would have had anyone questioning his story. A modest salary of $50,000 a year with no assets. Then, just 2 years later, he reported a salary of $750,000 a year with over $1 million in savings and numerous properties. The Republican Party would be split, some calling for his immediate resignation. But with a slim majority in the House, many Republicans were reluctant to lose a vote. Speaker of the House at the time, Kevin McCarthy, insisted he should stay.
The voters made the decision, and he has a right to serve. If there is something that rises to the occasion that he did something wrong, then we'll deal with that at that time.
I was elected to serve the people of New York's 3rd, not the party and politicians, Santos wrote on Twitter amid the public backlash. I will not resign. While Santos argued the only crime he committed was embellishing his resume, that didn't stop the onslaught of investigations that occurred shortly after he took office. The FEC, House Ethics Committee, Nassau County District's Attorney, and the U.S. Department of Justice were all looking into Santos. Just 4 short months after taking office, a grand jury would indict Santos on 13 charges, including wire fraud, money laundering, and theft of public funds. The Justice Department's indictment revealed that with the help of Nancy Marks, she and Santos inflated campaign fundraising numbers to mislead the FEC, National Party Committee, and the public. They did this by falsely reporting to the FEC that family members of Santos and Marks' family had made significant financial contributions to the campaign. In addition, they falsely reported to the FEC that Santos had loaned the campaign significant sums of money, including a $500,000 loan, when Santos had less than $8,000 in his bank account. These false reports allowed the campaign to reach the financial benchmarks to qualify for the program administered by the National Party Committee. As a result, Santos's congressional campaign received financial support. In addition, Santos stole the personal identity and financial information of contributors to his campaign. He then charged the contributors' credit cards repeatedly without their authorization. To circumvent campaign contribution limits, Santos falsely represented that some of these contributions were made by other persons, such as relatives. In one instance, Santos repeatedly charged one contributor's credit card over $44,000, ultimately transferring the vast majority of that money into his personal bank account. The indictment alleged that Santos told the contributors that the money would be used to support his candidacy, when he was actually spending a majority of the money on personal expenses, including luxury designer clothing and personal credit card debt. Santos also fraudulently received over $24,000 in unemployment benefits during the COVID pandemic, despite being gainfully employed. Santos pled not guilty to the charges and was released on a $500,000 bond.
This is the beginning of the ability for me to address and defend myself. We have an indictment, we have the information that the government wants to come after me on, and I'm going to comply. I've been complying throughout this entire process. I have no desire not to comply at this point. They've been gracious in there. Now I'm going to have to go and fight to defend myself. The reality is it's a witch hunt.
5 months after Santos's indictment, his campaign treasurer, Nancy Marks, pled guilty to federal conspiracy charges for her part in Santos's fraud. She was spared prison time, but 5 days later, the Justice Department slapped Santos with a superseding indictment, alleging 10 additional felonies. Santos learned of the news leaving a closed-door Republican meeting.
I have no clue of what you guys are talking about. No, I will not. Excuse me. Pardon me. I will have to call you back. There's no way.
Did you commit identity fraud? Will you step down?
I will not. I have no comment. I was in conference like everyone else without my phone, so I have nothing to talk about. I need to take a look at the whole thing.
Did you commit wire fraud, though? It's a pretty basic question.
After the superseding indictment was filed, calls for Santos's expulsion grew louder.
I got you guys some donuts. Donuts and coffee for all the hard work you guys do. Thank you so much for being here and doing your job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seriously, I appreciate you. There's coffee and donuts for all of you guys.
Yeah. So what's our plan?
In November, a motion to expel Santos was voted down, with many Republicans still reluctant to lose his vote. But 2 weeks later, the House Ethics Committee released a 56-page report detailing Santos's extensive lies. A second expulsion hearing was held just a month later, and with a vote of 311 to 114, Santos was officially expelled from Congress.
On this vote, the yeas are 311, the nays are 114, with 2 recorded as present. 2/3 voting in the affirmative, the resolution is adopted, and a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. The clerk will notify the governor of the state of New York of the action of the House. Under Clause 5D of Rule 20, the chair announces to the House that in light of the expulsion of the gentleman from New York, Mr. Santos, the whole number of the House.
Although initially defiant, Santos decided to take a plea deal after prosecutors turned over 80,000 pages worth of evidence to his lawyers.
It's an acknowledgement that I need to be held accountable, like any other American that breaks the law. I hope that by facing these consequences head on, I can begin to demonstrate my commitment to change and to earning your forgiveness. I do not ask for forgiveness, as I know that must be earned through actions, not words.
Told lie after lie until it caught up with him, until we caught up with him, and exposed him for what he truly was, an opportunist and a fraud.
Santos leveraged his campaign for his own enrichment and financial benefit. He did this by targeting specific supporters and constituents. He saw them as easy marks, and he made them victims of his fraud. Santos's victims were real people, and they suffered real losses. He went so far as to seek out elderly people who suffered from cognitive impairment and dementia.
The plea deal required Santos to plead guilty to wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. In addition to potential prison time, Santos was going to be required to pay $375,000 in restitution to his victims. Ousted from Congress, and with major restitution in his future, Santos capitalized on his newfound infamy by selling cameos, even offering to do them in the drag that he once denied taking part in, reportedly making over $400,000.
Hey, Gary Fortuna. George Santos here. I just wanted to stop by to congratulate you for winning the Clearwater, Florida beef eating contest. Eating 6 pounds of loose ground beef in under 30 minutes is a all.
When sentencing came, prosecutors pushed for 7 years, arguing Santos portrayed himself as the victim and that he used his crimes for personal gain, citing his paid cameos and podcast appearances. But Santos, never one to back down, took to Twitter. No matter how hard the DOJ comes for me, they are mad because they will never break my spirit, he wrote. On the day of sentencing, Santos cried and begged the judge for leniency. His lawyers argued that he already faced significant punishment, with a ruined reputation and no future job prospects. 2 years in prison would be sufficient for him to repent, they argued. But where is the remorse? Judge Schubert asked. Although he had earned hundreds of thousands doing cameos since he was expelled from Congress, Santos had yet to pay a dime in restitution and repeatedly painted himself the victim on Twitter. Unmoved by Santos's plea, she handed down an 87-month prison sentence, which is set to start on July 25th, 2025.